We welcome you, ladies and gentlemen, back to Talladega Super Speedway. This is race number 10. It is the final regular season race where we are going to find out the drivers that will be competing for the championship in the upcoming chase for the RTG Talladega Challenge. I'm Seth Cole alongside of Zach Freeman. And Zach, it's the last opportunity here for these drivers. You got a chance to be down there in drivers meeting, and there is actually some life for a number of drivers here, regardless of where they are inside that top 20.
That is correct, Seth. Good evening, everybody. It's good to see you all here tonight for Talladega, the big race tonight, the big cutoff race before the start of the chase. Everybody within positions 1 through 10 will be locked in. Now, of course, everybody's still going to have to battle for those top 10 point positions and make sure they're in that top 10 at the end of the night, but all 10 of those drivers will be in. So nobody needs to be worried tonight about being bumped by guys that might be outside of the top 10 within the top 20 with wins, namely guys like Tim Nofsker, Jeremy Jeffries, who are still actively chasing those top 20 spots. So it's going to be really interesting to see how tonight's race plays out, and I think we're in for a really good show, Seth.
We're going to have to keep an eye on all the points down around the 8th through just about 13th, 14th place, because we know that here at Talladega, positions change constantly. And, of course, we'll be keeping an update as well on, as you mentioned, Jeffries and Nofskers, their attempts to get into the top 20 in the points. They still are outside of that cutoff line. One of them might be in a must-win situation, but we'll get to that in just a moment. We're going to actually find out what a driver's mentality is coming into a race like this, the final race of the regular season. We're going to talk with the driver of the number 222 Ford, and that's Chris Emery. Hey, Chris, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network Studios booth. You got us? I will try another time here. Chris, you got us up here in the upper end booth? All right, apparently we are not able to get a hold of Chris at this time. We'll see if maybe we're able to get in touch with him maybe in a couple of minutes here. Obviously, we don't want to be talking to him when he's getting ready to grid. But right now, just to kind of talk about the points just for a brief moment. The drivers that have won this season, Zach, already, they're inside the top 20 points. They're already up inside of the top 10. The furthest down of those is 10th place, and that is our season opening winner, Dante Ricky. So really right now, it seems like the points battling to try and get into the top 10 is going to come down between 5 drivers. Billy Ellisler and Mark Paglia trying to hold on to their top 10 spots. Richard Martin, Wiley Coate, and John Godfrey. Maybe even Donnie Garrett and Cy Jones, depending on if they can finish up in the top 5, trying to wrestle those spots away.
Right, and conceivably, I mean, there is really a chance for anybody between, if you look at sixth place in points, Josh Metallic, who has 84 points out of the points lead, being currently led by Joe DeSpirito, who has been Iron Man this season with consistent finishes and 6 pole positions up to tonight. There's 84 points back with Josh. Now, there's a tie for 7th in points between Bertie Mobbs, Billy Elliser, 85 points out. Mark Paglia ninth, only 4 points behind Mobbs and Elliser, and Dante Ricci only 9 points behind Josh Metallic. So if you go even just a little farther than that, just 11 points behind Dante Ricci is Richard Martin, Wiley Coate 105 points back, John Godfrey 109, Donnie Garrett 111, Cy Jones 112. So these points are still pretty tight between these drivers, between, position 6 through about 16 or 17 in the points. And we've seen before with the size of these fields, although it's not the most likely thing to see, to have a driver, make a 30-point swing in a single race. It's also not impossible. A lot of things can happen. We have really large fields, and if you have a couple guys that have some big troubles early on in the race, and we've seen a couple big wrecks, especially the last 2 or 3 weeks, namely most memorable in the Trialville area recently. And if that happens early on and we get a big wreck that takes out a bunch of cars, you might see some of those guys that are 13th, 14th, 15th in points up there at the front of the pack tonight and trying to make big moves before the playoff race. It's going to be exciting, Seth. I'm ready for this one.
Yeah, we got a number of drivers that are going to attempt to play spoiler here tonight as well. A win and you're in situation. Let's try one more time so we can get a word here with Chris Emery before these guys go green. Hey, Chris, it's Zach and Seth up here in the upper end booth. You got us? I'm assuming that is a yes. So, Chris, I mean, you're coming out here, 66 laps of racing here tonight. A lot on the line for drivers and trying to make it into the playoffs. But obviously, I know your goal is to go out there and just try and win this thing. Is there anybody that maybe has made some deals with you here tonight of saying, hey, help me get up to the front here. There's a playoff spot on the line for me?
No, nobody's really asked me. I wouldn't mind pushing my buddy Jerem Lewis up to the front, or maybe Sonny Talman, but I'm willing to really work with anybody. So hopefully it'll go good for us.
Hey, Chris, it's Zach up in the booth. Real quick, before you guys start gritting up here. We've seen you've only started the last 4 races of the season. Took some provisionals the first 5 or 6, but in those last four races, you've got a finish of 13th, 23rd, 28th, 30th. Now, I don't think those numbers tell the whole story, because we've seen you in that 222 car up toward the front of the pack on multiple occasions, but it looks like you've just run into a little bit of bad luck. Do you think tonight might be the night that you can overcome that, get yourself a good solid top 3, top 5 finish, or even go for the win?
Oh, yeah, I'm all about winning. So, whatever comes my way, I'm willing to go with it. Yeah, I'm just going to try and stay on the bottom and stay out of the way and survive the first half of the race and see if I'm there at the end. It's always been fun, even when I get caught up in somebody else's mess. I've always had fun. It's really nice racing here, and yeah, looking forward to a good night. So, hey, thanks for calling me out, and I always like listening to y'all's broadcasts even after the race too. So. All right, it's time to race. Ready to go.
All right, well, best of luck to you there, Chris, and we look forward to seeing if maybe we can talk to you after this is over. Maybe you get that 222 in victory lane.
Hey, thanks a lot, gentlemen. Thanks.
As these drivers get lined up here, your front row, it's Joe DeSpirito back on point yet again alongside of Bob Seminara. That's going to be Bernie Mobbs and Chuck McClure going to line up there in row 2. Now, there are a couple of drivers coming into this race as well that I think points-wise, even if they don't win here today, I think they're pretty well situated. The 3 that I'm looking at in particular, Joe DeSpirito, obviously, way ahead, 43 points ahead of second place. So we know he's got basically the regular season championship locked up. He's just out there trying to win and carry over some win bonus points into the playoffs. And I think Chuck McClure and Jessica Shelton, 3rd and 4th in points. I think they're far enough ahead of the cut line now. I think that they are already locked in as well. So I would think that would take some pressure off of those three drivers in particular to go out there, try and see if they can rack up those bonus points towards the playoffs now by trying to go to victory lane.
Yeah, I think you are absolutely right, and that's another thing. You mentioned like Jessica Shelton in particular. These are drivers that we have seen have really, really strong, consistent seasons, have really good runs week after week after week, but they can't quite get there. We see pretty much the same colorful cast and crew of characters. Pretty much contending for those wins week after week, barring any major mechanical malfunctions or accidents, but. Joe DeSpirito, pole position number 7. We've talked about this earlier in the season, and really all season long, Seth. Being able to start up front and being able to keep yourself up there tends to pay dividends. But I think when these drivers are now in a must-win sort of situation, this is the last race before the chase here. I wouldn't be surprised to see some guys getting a little bit more aggressive, or Jess Shelton, like you said, getting up there trying to get that victory. Namely, number 77, Donnie Garrett, starting 6th position. We know how good he is at these super speedways. Not a single win, but a lot of wrecks. So what do we got for a starting lineup tonight, Seth?
Well, we already mentioned the first 2 rows. Row 3, we got Jeremy Jeffries, who's trying to point his way into the top 20. We'll get to his situation a little bit more in depth momentarily. He'll start alongside of Donnie Garrett in 6th. Rest of the top 10, Mark Paglia, Bob Dixon, Josh Metallic, and 2-time winner Tim Nofsker. 11th is Jessica Shelton. 12th, Dave Melson. Row 7, Billy Elliser and Chris Elliott. Rodney Sullins and Jerm Lewis in row 8. Row 9, Perry Bond, John Godfrey. And then Jay Crivello and Wiley Coate will make up the top 20. Grant Wesley's already locked in. He's 21st alongside of Manny D in 22nd. Row 12 finds Glenn Harris and Chris Emery. Robbie Nices and Richard Martin. Row 13, row 14, Stefan Martel and Terry Bombard. And the rest of the field will be Cy Jones, Sonny Tallman, Dante Ricky, and Bobby Farrell.
Well, here we go, Seth, as they work their way slowly through the trioval. The Dodge Challenger pace car has pulled off the racetrack, and for the final regular race of the season, we have a green flag at Talladega Superspeedway. Everybody fighting to try to get themselves into the chase starting next week.
We saw pretty much since the drop of the green flag back during the 6th race of the season how the aggressiveness picked up. You mentioned it, Zach. We're going to see a lot of aggressive moves here. An interesting strategy. Number of drivers dropping to the back. Bob Seminara in the 712 is dropping back there. I saw another car go way up there. This is very interesting.
Seth, I saw them as they headed down off into turn number 1. I kind of question whether or not Bob Seminara intended to do that. I'm kind of wondering if maybe he might have missed a shift or lost a gear right on the green flag of that restart. It looked like there might have been a little bit of contact. He shot way up the track into turn number 1 and almost brushed that outside wall. And now he's fallen back to about mid-pack as the leaders, about 10 cars deep. It's going single file down there into turn 1.
Zach, you hit the nail right on the head. I just heard from race control that Bob Seminara lost 3rd gear there on that start. So that's going to really hurt him on these restarts as well. He moved up out of the way since he wasn't going to be able to get up to speed like everybody else, allowing everybody to go by. He's been able to slot in line there in front of Tim Nofsker around the 9th position.
Yeah, he's still maintaining that top 10 there. And if we know anything about this Florida gang, it's that these guys are really, really fast on the super speedways, no matter where they are on the field. So it's definitely going to hurt him on restarts. And I would be willing to bet that 24 and 90 want him up there with them. But give him a few laps. We'll see what happens. Again, still single file through the top 5. DeSpirito mobs Jeffries, Paglia, and Jess Shelton at this time into turn 1.
Mentioned we were going to talk a little bit more in depth about the Jeremy Jeffries situation. 2-time winner this year, has a shot of getting up into the top 20 and getting a playoff spot. Came into this race a total of 25 points from 20th in the standings. We had a total of 34 drivers take the green flag here tonight. So with that being said, is Jeremy Jeffries almost in a must-win situation to get into the top 20, or do you think he can point his way in?
It is conceivable that he can point his way in, but he's definitely going to need a really strong, solid run. We're talking top 3, top 5. We know if he gets that win, he could potentially get himself up in there, as we see now Mark Paglia working to the outside of that number 8 Doritos Ford Mustang being pushed by Jessica Shelton and Bob Seminara. Paglia looking to have a pretty good run on that high line, being pushed as well himself. by Chuck McClure, Donnie Garrett, Josh Metallic, and Tim Nofsker.
Yeah, Paglia right now, kind of one of what we would call the bubble drivers coming to this race, ninth in the standings. He's got Billy Elliser ahead of him by 4 points. Richard Martin trying to take a spot in the top 10 behind him by about 15 points. The other driver on the flip side of those that are trying to get into the top 20 actually said Jeremy Jeffers was a two-time winner. That's incorrect. He's only got one win this season. Nofsker, on the other hand, in that 088 does have 2 wins. He's got a higher mountain to climb here tonight because after a rather tough finish last week, getting involved in that big wreck on the final lap, Nofsker comes into this race, according to my calculations, a total of 33 points back. So, we got a caution here as well. But, it's almost seeming like a must-win situation here, especially for Nofsker, as it looks like Robbie Nisus, Glenn Harris, as well as Cy Jones on the front straightaway, bringing out this first caution. Billy Elliser, that's a big one. That's 7th in points.
Yeah, I saw somebody take a pretty wild tumble. I actually didn't see it as it happened, but it looks like Dave Melson might have got a little bit of a bad bump draft. Came back down the track again, Seth, for week number 3 in a row, a tri-oval incident. Elliser tumbling 4, 5, 6 times. It looks like Glenn Harris caught up in that. Dave Melson, as we mentioned in the 13 as well. Not a good way to start the night for Billy Elliser as we work our way toward the chase.
And as we take a look at the replay here of what happened, also update another of the drivers that's trying to point their way into the top 10, and that is Richard Martin, who came into this race 9 points behind the 10th in the standings cut line. He actually had to start this race from pit road, missed the start, and about 2 laps down right now in that 43.
Yeah, and as we look at this replay, it looks like the 13 came down in the right rear of the 26, who actually hooked the fence. Guy contending for points, number 88, Grant Wesley, just barely making it through on the high side. Considering where that happened in the tri-oval and in the middle of the pack, I think we're lucky to see only 4 or 5 cars involved in that. It definitely could have been a lot worse, but Billy Elliser and that number 26 Flintstones Dodge really getting the bare end of this deal here.
See if we can get another camera angle here, because I almost wonder if maybe Dave Melson got a little bit of a tap from behind from the 08 of Glenn Harris. Was tough to tell from the one camera angle we looked at. We'll see here. I think there was a slight bit of contact. I think maybe Rodney Sullins in the 38 may have lifted a tiny bit. Melson lifted for him, and Harris wasn't able to be in that third car back, able to get the message that cars ahead of him were checking up.
Yeah, and again, that's just a product of that accordion effect that we've talked about week after week after week after week. Also, an issue that was addressed in tonight's drivers' meeting, where the race directors said, hey, guys, look, we know checkups are going to happen. Sometimes you get about halfway through the field, and there's not a whole lot of things that you guys can do to try to miss those, as everything just kind of bunches up there really abruptly. But unfortunately, I'm not sure if that's going to end anybody's night too prematurely. I did see Billy Elliser's number 26 driving himself down pit road. So he's not completely out of it yet, but we'll have to see exactly how bad that damage is going to be, as he did flip over multiple times coming out of the tri-oval.
Glenn Harris is trying to limp his race car back to pit road. Glenn came into this race 18th in points, so if he were to go to victory lane tonight, he would have locked himself up a playoff spot. Cy Jones with a lot of damage on that 7 machine, coming off his best finish, a podium run in last week's race, finishing, I believe it was 3rd in that one. He was 15th in points. Don't know how up to speed that machine's going to be. He would have been another driver if he had won tonight, would have been into the playoffs as well. And you brought it up here, Zach, and this is something different from last season, where we could end up having more than 10 playoff contenders, because it's the top 10 in points, and anybody outside the top 10 that's inside the top 20, they get in as well. So it's actually a lot more of an opportunity for drivers to get into the playoffs, and it's also going to make it a lot more difficult for these drivers when we get to these playoff races, especially the elimination races, because there's more competition to have to keep track of.
Absolutely. And again, what that's going to do tonight for those drivers that are, between 11th and 20th place in the point standings tonight, and even the guys that are just outside of the top 20, that's going to put a real premium on getting up there and trying to get that win tonight. Unfortunately, we did see Glenn Harris, who came in here tonight in 18th in points, 126 points out of the point lead. Uh, I don't think he's going to be able to get that win, as they have pulled that car behind pit wall. It was smoking pretty severely, so that's going to put an end of the night for the 08 of Glenn Harris. A real shame. It's not going to completely end his season. However, it looks like that is unfortunately going to knock him out of his chase hopes here tonight at Talladega.
Right now, with the 43 of Richard Martin, currently officially 3 laps down. I think that with this caution coming out, he would get one of those laps back. I think he'd be the recipient of the lucky dog, only car that was a lap down at the time. And with Billy Elliser, undoubtedly going to be off the pace, taking a very long barrel roll down from the exit of the tri-oval past the start-finish line. The pressure now, if Richard Martin cannot get back on the lead lap, the pressure now is going to be on the 6 of Wiley Coate and the 7-11 of John Godfrey, because those two drivers came into this race in a position to be able to move themselves points-wise into the top 10. I believe it was about roughly 20 points that was between Billy Elliser and Wiley Coate. That can be made up here tonight. John Godfrey came in 24 points back, so depending on what happens there with that 26, if he can survive, limp that thing home with at least a decent result, and be able to keep within the same vicinity as the 6 and the 7-11, he might still be able to keep his playoff hopes alive. But those are the 3 drivers, at least right now, that we're going to be looking at in terms of trying to point their way in.
Right, and as we talked about at the top of tonight's show, fortunately for Elliser, car's still running, car's still on the track. However, had that knocked him out of contention with 31 cars starting tonight's race, that would have been a big 30-point hit for Elliser. Likely would have knocked him out of the top 10 in points. So, like you mentioned, Seth, at this point, he's just got to try to survive, win that battle of attrition and try to get himself, hopefully back up into the top 20 by night's end, as it looks like we do have the lights out on top of the pace car, which means we will be going green next time by on lap number 9.
Bob Dixon and Jay Crivello are going to be staying out here, so they'll be the front row when we go back green. Bob Seminary, or make that rather Joe DeSpirito, Bernie Mobbs, Mark Paglia, Jeremy Jeffries, the next 2 rows. They, along with the entire rest of the field, came down pit lane. Not sure how this is going to play into fuel strategy, because obviously there could be some other cautions that come out and completely shake it up. But one thing that's going to be interesting to watch here on this restart is that 7-12 of Bob Seminara, 4th on that outside line, because as we said, he lost 3rd gear on the initial start of this race. We're going to have to see how these restarts affect him, his ability to be able to not only get up to speed, but stay up here inside of the top 10 while trying to get up through the gears.
Well, and what I'm going to do, Seth, is I'm going to remind you. Remember last week, we had a caution about halfway through the race, and that number 56 that's starting on the outside of that front row opted not to come in. And that strategy ended up playing out for him, as about 10 or 11 laps later, there was another caution that came out, and the rest of the field also had to come down to top off for gas as well, which kept him right at the front of the field until right towards the end of that race when he ran into some bad luck. So this might not, especially 8 laps into this event tonight, Seth, have been a bad call for either Bob Dixon or Jeff Crivello in that number 56 Mopar Dodge. Will be exciting to see how it plays out as they work their way back into the tri-oval, looking for that green flag again.
Going to be taking it here on lap 9 of 66. We'll see if maybe we can settle into a bit of a long green flag run. If I remember correctly, last week's race, a lot of the races we had out of the tri-oval, a lot of the laps run under pacing was actually the slowest pace race these drivers have run all season, as Bob Dixon will get us back under the green flag here at Talladega. Be interesting to see what the 6 lap fresher tires behind these top 2 are going to be able to do, trying to work their way back up to the lead.
Sure, and I'm not sure tires will play so much of a factor, but having that little bit of extra gas just in case this does run green the entire way till the next round of pit stops That would obviously put the 143 and the 56 at a disadvantage, but that would set everybody else up to continue running the rest of the way. Now, we did see Bob Seminara on that restart there. He got up through first and second gear up to speed pretty well. That third gear obviously missing. That hurt him quite a bit. He did move up out of the racing groove to allow his competitors room to get by, but it looks as though he has fallen back to about the 27th or 28th position, which is a huge loss. Now, that might not seem like a big deal right now, as he can ride around and hopefully try to make up some of that ground throughout this race. But if we have a late race restart, that's going to hurt a lot.
I would have to think as well, I would think at this point in time, he would like to see this thing remain green, as Mark Paglia just got into Bob Dixon and then up into the wall. Oh, and now Crivello's going to hook off of him. Oh, are we going to be able to keep it all straight? We do. That probably should have been a big wreck off of turn 2. I don't know how everybody was still going, but
Sorry, Seth, go ahead.
I was just going to say, in terms of Bob Seminara, it's kind of a rock and a hard place, because if we end up having cautions, each restart's really going to hurt him and getting up to speed. But if we remain green, that third gear is going to be so important with coming off pit road with whoever he comes to pit road with.
Yeah, absolutely. That's really going to hurt getting up to speed. It doesn't matter if it's a restart or a green flag pit stop. That's going to put a world of hurt on that 712 car. Now, I'm not going to say that's the end of his race too prematurely here, as we could get a long green flag run and he could make his way back up through the field, but definitely not a good thing for short runs at all. Now, Seth, we did mention just a moment ago on the backstretch, a couple bad bump drafts, a few guys getting up into the wall. You mentioned the 28 of Paglia got up in the wall. I saw the number 8 of Jeremy Jeffries get up into the wall, and I got to wonder if that affected the number 8 car. Remember, he's trying to get into the top 20 in points, not too far out, but he's fallen back about mid-pack now, the last car on the inside line coming into the tri-oval. I'm kind of concerned if there's a little bit of body damage, that could hurt him later on. Maybe not so much right now, as he'll be able to, maintain and make up some of that time in the draft, but if this goes single file, that could hurt him later.
Joe DeSpirito around the outside for the race lead. And yeah, for Jeremy Jeffries here tonight, there's two drivers in particular that he has to kind of gauge himself to. That's the 9 of Chris Elliott, who comes into this race 21st in points, and then the guy that he's really targeting, the 10 of Terry Bombard, who holds that coveted 20th position in the points. Now, he comes into this one a total of 25 points behind Terry Bombard. That's basically where the goal's got to be. He's got to finish about 26 positions ahead of the 10 machine. I was looking in terms of Glenn Harris DNFing from this race and wondered, is it possible for him to be able to knock Glenn Harris out of the top 20? But there's about 60 point separation between those two, so no chance for Jeremy Jeffries to be able to capitalize on the hard luck of Glenn Harris here tonight.
Yeah, unfortunately, he's just going to have to get up there and try to get that win, but with that right side damage, which I'm assuming he's got at this point, it's not going to be too easy. Now, we look back toward the front of the pack, the number 24 of Joe DeSpirito back out to the lead again, the 28 of Paglia, 90 Mobs, 088 of Nofsker, all single file in that middle line with the help of Chuck McClure. However, that first side-by-side battle going to be for 5th between the 143 of Bob Dixon and Chuck McClure on the outside line. Dixon with a little bit of a help with the 94 of Jessica Shelton behind him and the 77 of Donnie Garrett. But right now, as we've seen throughout the course of this season, that bottom line just not quite as fast, and they also don't have the numbers that middle line has.
Yeah, we're so used to seeing Chuck McClure in that 17 running the Kroger colors on his Chevrolet. New sponsor here tonight, Jack Daniels. Got Gentleman Jack on the hood of his machine, and actually to his inside, another car running a new livery this evening. Jessica Shelton running the Jeff Burton throwback on her number 94. So some new looks for some of these drivers. And you got Joe DeSpirito out in front here, and I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think we're going to see the most aggressive driving out of him that we've seen all season, because we've talked with him. He said he wants to win, but I think that even more importantly here tonight, he has to win, because he's going to be getting those 10 bonus points for winning the regular season championship, but he's also got drivers like Grant Wesley, who's a 2-time winner, Bob Seminara, who's a 2-time winner. 5 bonus points for winning, so it'd be a 3-way tie for the number 1 seed. He wants that number 1 seed all to himself.
And you know who else wants a little bit more points right now? That number 28, Mark Paglia, who surged by Despirito on that low line, had a little bit of help from Tim Nofsker and Chuck McClure, who also came down in front of the 143 of Dixon, pushing him ahead side by side down into turn number 3. Despirito wanting that point back, he will get that position in the middle of 3 and 4, but again, the 28 surging back toward the front as he comes off of turn number 4. Pretty even battle as they work their way down to the trioval, and we've got our first notable 3 wide of the night about midway through the pack. It looks like it's one of those Doritos cars. Guys starting to get a little racy here on lap 16.
That's Chris Elliott, Jeff Crivello, Terry Bombard up there. I think that's Wiley Coate in the 6th, also 4th on that outside line. That's around the 12th position. And Mark Paglia, the one thing I think that's going to help Mark Paglia here tonight is he was in the exact same situation 1 season ago, where he had to maintain his position in the top 10 in points to be able to make it into the playoffs. Comes into this race 9th in points, only 4 points ahead of that 10th in the standings cutoff line. So with having that prior experience, you have to think that that's going to help him out here this evening in his attempt to make it into the playoffs in back-to-back seasons.
4 wide as there's a slower car coming off of turn 4. Man, that got tight real quick there, but it looks like everybody was able to maintain their lines and keep it together. As right now, Despirito still with that strong push from the number 90 of Bernie Mobs. Grant Wesley now to the inside of Mobs on that inside line. I don't even know where he came from, if we're going to be completely honest with each other, but trying to make that low line work right now, side by side with Donnie Garrett at the left rear of Bernie Mobs coming off that turn number 2.
Yeah, Grant Wesley shot his car down to the inside line through the trioval, so much so that I think his left side tires may have gone just a little bit below that double yellow line, but didn't advance his position, so no harm, no foul. Trying to tow Mark Paglia, Tim Nofsker, and Chuck McClure on that inside line. Look on the outside line there. Normally we end up seeing Dante Ricky ride towards the back in the first half of this race, but none of it. That bright green and white number 84 is 3rd on that outside line after starting towards the back of the pack.
And we talk about guys that are, pretty comfortable coming into the night. They know that they have positions, they know that they've got wins to get themselves into the chase. As you see, Billy Ellisert real slow on that outside line in that 26, took a lot of damage. Now, there's a couple guys, right in the top 10 in points that are really going to eat up those points, because that's going to hurt Ellisert in points quite a bit. He's going to continue falling laps down, but he's banking on some more action out on the racetrack. But back to the number 84 of Dante Ricky, we know that he's got wins. We know that he's within the top 10 in points. So I've got to think for drivers like that who have those wins, who are locked out, they are full throttle right now. All they're going out there to do is try to get a victory and, pad that cushion in their points just a little bit more, as we have now Donnie Garrett leading the field. Got to push up there from the number 8 of Jeremy Jeffries. So obviously, if there was any right side damage on the 8 of Jeffries, which I'm actually... Oh, we've got a car upside down.
Holy cow.
I'm not sure if that 56 actually went upside down or not, but he definitely got airborne.
Got a couple of cars that got collected up in that. Saw another car shoot down to the inside wall on the front straightaways. The field is frozen. I'm not certain. It might have been the 57 of Stefan Martel, might have been the other car that I saw shoot down to the inside. Looks like he may have some left side damage, but a wild airborne ride there for Jeff Crivello in the 56.
Yeah, and Crivello never actually flipped over, but he got tagged in the right rear by the 57 of Martel. And at the speed that they're going, coming out of the trioval, and again, another incident coming out of the trioval, it's kind of crazy to me to think how many incidents we have seen on that spot in the racetrack in the last 3 weeks now. I don't think the damage to Crivello looks too bad, and I think the number 57 of Martel probably saved him just a little bit more damage, but man, what a wild ride that was. I don't think anybody took a whole too much damage out of that, but again, caution flag here on lap number 20.
Well, Crivello and Stefan Martel both came into this race mathematically out of the playoffs. No way that they could, even with a win, point their way into the top 20, but certainly not the way that the two of them want to end off the regular season either. And that was a really strange wreck there, too, because it almost looked like the 57 got loose coming out of the trioval, and the car just darted a little bit to the left, getting into the right rear quarter panel of Crivello.
Yeah, and that's not something you see too often, but It does happen every once in a while, depending where you are on that trioval and how hard that you're working that steering wheel at the speeds that they're running in the draft. It doesn't take too much for just a slight shift in the weight balance of that car to snap it to the left, which really appears to be what we saw. It is a real shame, taking out a couple really fast cars. Again, we had mentioned earlier, Crivello was kind of working towards strategy there, having not pitted the last time by. Speaking of pitting, though, all of your leaders now working their way down pit road. Donnie Garrett will pull down into his pit stall. The number 8 Jeffries right in front of him. It doesn't look as though anybody's going to take tires. And as I say that, the right side of Jeffries' car does come up. I see somebody else that looks like Chuck McClure taking left sides. But the majority of these guys coming in, topping off the fuel tank as they work their way off pit road. Joe DeSpirito with that number 1 pit stall. Coming in handy, it looks like he will come off first. Garrett come off second. Jeffries third. Ricky fourth. And Bernie Mobbs coming out of pits in position number 5.
That first pit stall, so important. We hear it just about every week from whoever has the pole position. If they end up going on to win the race, they say it's that number 1 pit stall on pit road that was the huge difference maker. It looks like we do have one driver that is staying out to take the wave around. That's Richard Martin. Now, the reason that he actually has to stay out and take this wave around is because Cy Jones and Billy Elliser, who we saw go a lap down under that green flag run, those are the 2 drivers currently in line for the lucky dog positions.
Right. And as we mentioned earlier, Richard Martin being just 11 points out of that number 10 position being held by Dante Ricky. He stands to make up some ground here. Billy Elliser, as we've seen now, a couple laps down due to that big tumble that he took in the front stretch there on lap number 8. He stands to lose a bit, while Richard Martin, that number 43, looking to gain as absolutely much as he can. Caution's falling his way at this point as he will work towards getting another lap back here.
With Billy Elliser getting his lap back, if he had not gotten his lap back, it looked like we could officially lock Josh Metallic into the playoffs. But since now the 26th is going to be back on the lead lap, and he came into this race very close to Josh Metallic in the stands, 1 point back, this now puts Josh Metallic back on the bubble of possibly falling outside of the top 10 in the standings, since there's still a long ways to go. The interesting thing of that timing of that caution too, Zach, was the fact we were getting close to when these drivers, if we had gone green from the start, would have had to have made their first round of green flag pit stops. You mentioned about Crivello staying out, Bob Dixon the same. With Crivello getting involved in this wreck, obviously the strategy doesn't apply to him right now, but Bob Dixon, this helps put him back on the same fuel strategy as everybody else. So, again, to be able to be out in front, lead a couple of laps, that actually worked out in his favor.
It did, and while he restarted in first on that last restart, he did lose some positions on the racetrack. So it didn't work out quite as well as what he might have hoped it would. However, being back on the same strategy as the leaders again, maybe not necessarily a bad thing, especially if we get a good long green flag run. We have to make some green flag pit stops. That'll keep him, hopefully, unless barring any errors or any unforeseen circumstances, that should keep him up in that lead draft. So that's something that he's not going to have to worry about. He no longer has to worry about being off sequence, going in, coming out of the pits, and not having anybody to draft with. So, it worked out. Maybe not exactly the way that he would have liked it to, but he's still in contention here, so that's a good thing.
Robbie Nice is out in front here. We'll see if he's going to stay out and lead us to the green, or if he'll be coming down pit road here at 1 to go and turning the race lead over to Joe DeSpirito. Just want to remind everybody as well, there are drivers in the field here tonight that if they go to victory lane, they automatically are locked into the playoffs. Drivers that are 11th through 20th in the stands. Those drivers would include the following: Richard Martin, Wiley Coate, John Godfrey, Donnie Garrett, Bob Dixon, Dave Melson, Sonny Tallman, and Terry Bombard. 2 drivers that would have also been on that list, but they've got a lot of damage, so I'm not really sure they'd be able to win this race here tonight, were Cy Jones and Glenn Harris. Of course, Harris out of the race.
Yeah, that's really, again, you hate to see that for guys, especially something like that happening so early in the race and take you out of chase contention. As we do see Robbie Nice's now, he does peel off down pit road. He's going to go in and take service on his car. Another driver that was involved in that lap number 8 incident, So I believe that will put the number 24 of Despirito back onto the point. However, going back to what you were just talking about, Seth, this is going to have to be something that we really keep an eye on because Dante Ricky currently holds that number 10 point position. However, if he were to fall out of that number 10 point position, if something were to happen, his night ends early, he gets involved in an accident, has some sort of mechanical failure, he is still locked in, having won a race. Again, you mentioned those drivers that are looking for wins to try to keep themselves in there. We've seen a lot of the guys between 11th and 20th in points have some really, really good runs. So it's not inconceivable that any of those guys could still put themselves back into the chase and, come next week, have themselves right back up there in it. But again, with 23 laps in the books here, coming to lap number 24 on the restart, which we will be, as I see the pace lights are out on top of the pace cars. They work their way down the Alabama super stretch. Everybody taking a deep breath, pulling those straps tight, getting ready for the next run. And it hasn't been a dull race. It's been a very exciting race to this point. We've seen guys making moves, maybe a little bit of that desperation a la the number 28 Mark Paglia, who made a couple really aggressive moves early on in the night, but was really paying off for him as we saw him up toward the front of the pack. We also look at the number 77, Donnie Garrett. We know he's really strong. The number 39, Josh Metallic, really strong. Guys that don't have wins tonight that would really like to get them. They're in the top 10 in points right now, so they're not out of it, but they want to get that win. Donnie Garrett, especially in that 14th position in points right now, needs that win to lock himself in.
I asked this question of Chris Emery before we ended up having these drivers roll off from pit road. This is the type of racing where you are 50% racer, 50% diplomat. In order to win a race, in order to make moves, you've got to have someone willing to work with you. Those drivers that I named, 11th through 20th, you think they talked with drivers that are already locked into the playoffs saying, hey, you've got nothing to lose. You're already locked in. I need to win this race in order to get in. Work with me here tonight.
Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised if some sort of those communications might have happened between drivers, but you also have to remember, coming down to the end of this race, in the last 3 or 4 laps, everybody that's in contention to win this race is going to want to win that race. So no matter what strategy you might think you have pre-planned, as we take the green again, heading back down toward turn 1, could all go right out the window. It all depends on how the chips are going to fall here. Drivers now working their way into turn number 1 and 2. Joe Despirito on that bottom line, Seth. We've seen Joe Despirito have that starting point right at the front of the field a few different times this season and kind of fall back and other drivers overtake him, but he looks to have a really, really fast car as they head toward turn 3 on the backstretch right now.
Jeremy Jeffries, though, moves up to the second groove, picking up Donnie Garrett and Dante Ricky. Despirito sees it. He'll move up and throw the block as well. That outside line did a pretty good job of getting themselves lined back up after they lost a little bit of momentum with Bob Seminara, of course, losing third gear, having to drop out of the line. So that's going to be something these drivers are going to have to think about during these restarts as well, depending on if the 712 is up towards the front of the field, getting whichever line he's in formulated back up, keeping that momentum going.
Well, and I would just like to give a shout out to that number 712 of Bob Seminara. Having that gearbox issue, we've seen him both green flag runs now, make his way back up toward the front of the pack. That way, when these restarts do happen, he is right at the front of the pack and he loses a ton of ground. However, if you think about it this way, if he were at the back of the pack, losing that much ground, he would fall out of draft with these lead drivers. So he's doing everything that he can to try to maintain good track position. And right now, that middle line lined up 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 cars deep, single file, making a lot of speed. Your first side-by-side battle looks to be a little bit farther toward the pack, possibly between the number 60 of Perry Bond, and it looks like maybe the 13 of Dave Melson there, involved earlier in tonight's wreck, but, has rebounded quite well.
There's the 7-11 of John Godfrey, Jerm Lewis in the 616. You'll see a little bit further back there is Bob Seminara. He's been able to tuck in line, following in the tire tracks of the 56 of Crivello, who, despite us seeing him that back end go up into the air, it looks like that car might still actually be up to speed in the draft.
Yeah, it looks like for the time being, he's doing okay. It didn't look as though he took too much damage. I didn't see him really hit a whole lot. Maybe he glanced off the wall, but for the most part, landing on top of that 57, probably saving him Quite a bit of damage there. Our first side by side, however, looks to be for ninth position between the Chris Elliott car and number nine Doritos Dodge and the number 60 of Perry Bond. Now, this is something that we haven't seen. We've seen these guys have long green flag runs and get single file and just kind of ride around, but we're not even quite to the halfway portion of this race. Everybody playing it pretty calm. I don't think anybody wants to tear up their car before they have to, but right now, single file until about the halfway point of the field.
Yeah, these drivers have at least one more pit stop that they're going to have to make. With the timing of that last yellow flag, would have been, as I said, right around when they would have made their first round of green flag pit stops. So now these drivers targeting somewhere in the vicinity of 42 to 44 when they would make potentially their final pit stop of the day. There's a couple drivers in the field here tonight. Obviously, this series runs at Talladega all season long. There's a couple of drivers that in the past week have ended up winning at Talladega in other series. Bob Seminara winning last Saturday in the 2020 anniversary Talladega special event, and Jerm Lewis last night took a checkered flag at Talladega in the IMRC Light Series. So that kind of momentum, do you think that plays any factor into these drivers coming to Talladega here in a series that runs at the 2.66 mile superspeedway every week?
Oh, 100%. I believe that momentum definitely carries over from race to race and week to week. I think a prime example of that right now is the guy that's running in the number 2 position in the number 8 Doritos Ford. Jeremy Jeffries has won almost everything at Rolling Thunder Gaming, within this past month. I think there's more races that you could count that he hasn't won than what he has. And you see that momentum paying dividends right now. It gives you that little bit of a morale boost. It gives you that confidence boost. Kind of makes you feel like Superman out there on that racetrack when you're running good week after week after week after week and getting those wins. So I think that momentum plays a big part in it, especially at super speedway races where it gives you just a little bit more mental fortitude than what you might have, especially if you're worried about making your way into the points here.
Yeah, as of right now, just an update about Jeremy Jeffries and his situation trying to get into the top 20 in points. Chris Elliott is running in the 14th position, so I think he is ahead of Chris Elliott. Right now, Jeremy Jeffries would be 21st in points, but the guy that he needs to finish 25 positions ahead of, Terry Bombard, right now running in 17th. So as long as Terry can finish up inside of the top 20 here in this race, he's basically denying Jeremy Jeffries an opportunity at battling in the postseason.
Absolutely. As we see now, Dante Ricky and Josh Metallic working the outside of the racetrack. They're trying to make some moves. It looks like that high line starting to come to life again. Cy Jones bounces it off the wall again, coming out of turn 4, sending those leaders scrambling just a little bit, but it looks like everybody able to maintain their positions across the line as they run at the moment. Joe DeSpirito still holding the lead of the race. Jeremy Jeffries running second, Garrett third, Shelton fourth, Ricky running fifth. Sixth position will be Mark Paglia, seventh, Josh Metallic, Bernie Mobbs, Grant Wesley, and Chuck McClure rounding out your top 10 as they work their way down the backstretch.
And they're starting to get racy from about the 6th position on back with Paglia and Metallic side by side. Paglia's got Bernie Mobbs, last week's winner with him. Two-time winner Grant Wesley up on the top side with Metallic. And the reason why this gets a little bit worrying is one of these two lines is going to prevail eventually, and they're going to have a huge run on these top 4. The question is, where do they take that momentum, and do they stack it behind him as there's a car up in the wall there? I think that was Chris Elliott might have brushed the wall up in the tri-oval, able to save it. Nofsker gave him room.
Man, we've seen a lot of really close calls tonight. Guys, the give and take that we've seen out there on the racetrack has been phenomenal. As we mentioned before, the two wrecks that we have had definitely both could have been way worse than what they turned out to be, but guys being really patient, trying to give everybody around them a little bit more room than, what they have. Nobody wants to wad up, 15, 20 cars, especially when you're not quite halfway through the race here. So guys doing a really good job of being patient and giving their competitors a lot of respect out there on the racetrack. Now we see Dante Ricky, the first car on the outside line, on the outside of that number 90 car of Bernie Mobbs. That inside line now only has 5 cars now as Mark Paglia. Again, a really aggressive move. We're seeing some really aggressive driving on the number 28 of Paglia tonight. not necessarily aggressive in the sort of way that's going to do any harm to the field, but man, he's really putting that number 28 car to work as they work out of turn number 2. He's now on the outside of Bernie Mobbs in the number 90. It looks like those 5 cars in the lead halfway down the backstretch now, just not the line, not quite the draft of what that top line is going to have.
And obviously, everybody's goal here tonight, whenever they put the helmet on and they rev up the engine, is to go out there and win. Not sure how many drivers really know the point situation that they're in. That's our job up here in the booth. For Mark Paglia, with the fact that we end up having Billy Elliser run into an issue early on in this race, I would say as long as he's able to just finish up inside of the top 15, he's actually locked himself up a spot into this season's playoffs. But to your point, making aggressive moves here as if he's in a must-win situation.
And not necessarily a bad thing, as long as it's not a detriment to the other drivers around him. That's just really hard racing, and he's doing a really good job of it. As we do see now 3 wide, and now Despirito taking to the high side of the racetrack. Jeremy Jeffries and Donnie Garrett on the low side. It looked like that low line might have gotten just a little bit more momentum as Despirito, might have went up to that middle line to try to hopefully, maybe help his teammate there in the number 90. 4 cars deep, we've got 3 by 3 by 3 by 3 on the racetrack now. Guys starting to make a little bit more moves, trying to get a little bit more aggressive. That long single file line that we saw, gone.
Yeah, one of those drivers that's making those moves that are working his way to the front, that's Chuck McClure. About a lap and a half ago, he was 4th car on that extreme outside line. He's now leading the middle line and up inside of the top 5. Looking at that 6 of Wiley Coat as well. That's a driver, keep an eye on him because of Billy Elliser now falling a lap down. If he officially finishes where he is in 28th, then it would be, I believe, a 7th or better finish for Wiley Coat to put himself up inside of the top 10, 8th with a lap led for the 6 machine.
Man, Seth, I'm really glad that I've got you here, commentating this race with me, because you were doing math on the fly so quickly and so impressively to be able to crunch those numbers. But as you mentioned, we got trouble
Richard
in the
Martin.
tri-oval.
Manny D is involved as well.
This looks like the 13 Melson, the 43 Manny Diaz. I did see a 3rd car as well there. Manny Diaz in the 43 hard up into that outside wall. Not what he needed tonight. We talked about Manny Diaz and trying to make up some of those positions, to try to get himself, into those points. And man, that is not what he needed. He went about full speed right in the middle of the tri-oval. Looked like he might have gotten hooked head on hard into the outside wall for the 43 car.
I think if I saw it correctly, I think it was some contact between Martin and Bob Seminara. We'll go back and take a look at the replay. But yeah, to the point you just made, Richard Martin already trapped 2 laps down after he missed the start of this race. And that car nosed it full speed into the outside wall. And that, even if it's moderate damage, that is going to hurt him speed-wise. And that could be his playoff hopes done right there.
Yep, and that is my apologies for whatever reason I was calling him as Manny Diaz, but yes, Richard Martin in the 43 was 11th in points, looking to make some ground up off of potentially Billy Elliser's bad luck. Man, that's just not what he needed. Again, we see the 13 Dave Melson, pretty severe damage on the right side of his car as well. But my biggest concern is that front end on the 43. He hit that really, really hard. The damage not looking too terrible, but what you have to start being concerned about is, did that do any engine damage? Because that engine damage definitely going to be, much more of a detriment than any sort of cosmetic damage could have been.
Yeah, without a doubt, as looks like Manny D, who was collected up in this, has actually taken his machine back behind the wall. So an early end for his night as he makes it just around to the halfway point. We'll have to keep updated on that 43 of Richard Martin and the 13 of Dave Melson. Dave came into this race technically in a must-win situation. If he were to win, he'd lock himself into the playoffs, but he could not mathematically point his way into the top 10, and he took a pretty hard shot with the right side of his machine. I think he actually went down and got the inside wall with the nose as well.
Yeah, a lot of really torn up race cars here. Guys that were looking to have good nights, try to get themselves into the chase next week. Not quite going the way that they wanted to. All of our leaders did come down to pit lane, took tires, took fuel. Most guys only taking 2 tires of their choosing, topping off the gas tank. Now, I noticed something with that round of pit stops that we haven't seen a whole lot of. We've seen Joe DeSpirito in that first pit stall, really be able to make up some time, gain a lot of positions coming out of the pits. He came back out on the racetrack in 12th position, lost a ton of time on pit road. The number 8 of Jeremy Jeffries was the first car off, followed by the 77 of Garrett, 17 McClure, 28 of Paglia, and the 6 of Wiley Coate. But yeah, he lost a lot of positions there. Not exactly sure if that was a result of positions lost on the racetrack or not. But that P1 pit stall, not quite as advantageous as what we've seen it be, in other races so far this season.
I would have to wonder, these drivers are still going to have to make one more pit stop. They were about halfway through a green flag run there, and I have to wonder if maybe DeSpirito and others like Metallic, Shelton, Bombard, who are behind him, if they went with a 4-tire strategy, the drivers that he lost positions to maybe went with just the 2 tires, since they didn't really have to take on a full 2 cans of fuel being just halfway through that green flag run.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering too. However, the other thing I'm also wondering about is if maybe some of your leaders playing a little bit of that strategy game might only have taken a half to 1 can of fuel, while others may have taken a half can or more than what they did. So we'll have to see how it plays out. Ultimately, not too much ground lost, as we've seen a lot of these guys that are kind of stuck in the middle of the pack right now. There are a lot of really fast cars. That ground can be easily made up. Despirito now being showed as in 8th position. Again, that is your points leader, which is why we are keeping such a close eye on him here tonight. He has all but locked up the regular season championship. Still looking for that win number 1, which comes with those bonus points that we've talked about. Now, he will be, before bonus points are added in there, your points leader starting next week again. However, there will be, as you mentioned earlier, Seth, a couple cars that with bonus points from victories this season that are going to be right there with him. So it's going to put them on even playing ground. And we did talk to Joe DeSpirito earlier in the season. Again, 7th pole position here tonight. And he said, I would give away every one of those pole positions if I could just get this number 24 car into victory lane. So a long way to go here tonight. Perry Bond, I'm looking at him right now in the number 60 car, having a really, really solid run here tonight at Talladega. He's one of those names that, we've seen out here running week after week after week after week, finding himself in trouble, on several occasions, but having a really good night. He's got that number 60 car in that 10th position, and I think he's got to be feeling pretty good about where his chances are right now tonight.
Yeah, definitely having a great run. He's 27 points back from 20th in the standings, so I'm not really sure even if he were to win, if he could point his way into the playoffs. But, for some of these guys, they're not even thinking about the playoffs. They're just thinking about finishing out the regular season with as best the finish as they can muster. Got a couple of cars that just hit pit road there. Robbie Nisus in the 54, as well as the lap machine of Bobby Farrell. Bobby Farrell was able to make the full races for the past 2 weeks. Actually had some decent results because of that also, but right now 20 laps down in that 45. You see Billy Elliser and Cy Jones going around. Now, Billy Elliser, we talked about his situation between himself as well as Wiley Coate. Well, the skies are looking a little bit brighter for that 26 car because of the fact that Richard Martin, who was 11th in the points coming to this race, ran into that issue. And another driver that he had to worry about that ended up having a possible win in your end scenario, Sonny Tallman, encountered some problems there under pacing. A mechanical issue plagued the number 55. He'll be finishing out of the race with an engine camshaft issue. And why is that important for Billy Elliser? That's another position, another point he's able to pick up.
Yep, and as we've talked about, Seth, here, as the pace lights are off on top of the pace car, every position mattering on the racetrack for points, guys trying to get themselves in, trying to pay attention to where guys falling out are. Elliser, a long battle ahead of him here, as we know that he's got quite a bit of damage on that race car, some engine damage probably also holding him back just a little bit, but so far caution's falling for him in the right way. Let's give you a quick rundown of the running order before they come back to green here on lap number 39. They will be going green back at lap 40. Currently pacing the field, Jeremy Jeffries in the number 8 car, Garrett in the number 77 will be second, McClure, Paglia, Wiley Coe rounding out your top 5, Tim Nofsker, Joe DeSpirito, Dante, Ricky Perry, Bond, and Josh Metallic will be your top 10. Back in 11th spot, we've got Grant Wesley, 12th, Jessica Shelton, 13th, Terry Bombard, Burby Mobs running in 14th, Godfrey Elliott Dixon, Sullins Emery through positions 19, Jerem Lewis 20th, Stefan Martel, Dave Melson, Bob Seminara, Crivello in 24th, Robbie Nisus in 25th. Again, Billy Ellisor back in that 26th position, Cy Jones, Richard Martin in the 43 and 28, Sonny Tallman, Manny D both scored out of the race. Bobby Farrell on the racetrack 20 laps down, and Glenn Harris, of course, with that wreck earlier in 30 seconds as we come back to the green flag here, Seth, on lap number 40.
27 laps to go, and 40 laps into this race. Amazingly enough, the top 10 in the points coming into this race in playoff spots right now are still the 10 drivers that would be our playoff contenders if the race were to end right now, but still a long ways to go as Jeffrey's trying to figure out which lane he wants to tow. He'll move up to the second line with Donnie Garrett.
Yeah, we see them in that advantageous middle line that we've talked about. Number 17 of Chuck McClure coming up off that bottom. He will tuck it back down there going into turn 3. But I was wondering, we saw last week, the lead cars, figured out that bottom line wasn't doing a whole lot. So what we saw was everybody really fast, kind of, being pretty respectful and sharing that middle lane, which ended up turning out into some great racing. But as they come across the line, Jeffrey's still holding the lead alongside the number 17 of McClure. Jeffrey's being pushed now by the 77 of Garrett and the number 28 of Paglia. Chuck McClure, though, another guy who hasn't quite gotten it done this season that we know is really, really fast, leading that bottom line, being pushed by Wiley Coe and Joe DeSpirito, right back up in the mix of things in 6th position, 3rd car deep on that inside line.
Yeah, Wiley Coe in the 6th with those couple of drivers now out of the race, and Billy Ellis are picking up a couple of spots. The bar has been raised for the 6th to point his way into the top 10. Instead of finishing 8th, he now has to finish in the 5th position in order to knock Billy Ellis out of the top 10.
Yeah, and Wiley Coe, another one of those guys that we've seen have really, really, really strong runs this season, be really fast and contend, for those positions, but always, for whatever reason, manages to get swept up in those incidents, about halfway through the field, or the rare occurrence where we have a big wreck toward the front of the pack. But right now, having a really good run. Look at that number 28 car. Again, I can't stress it enough, Seth. That 28 of Mark Paglia having such a good night tonight. Dante Ricky now going to make it 3 wide as we have Paglia to the point, 3 wide, about 2 cars deep in the field. And it looks like 5 rows deep, going 3 wide. Now the 3 cars stuck on that middle line, the number 8 of Jeffries, 77 of Garrett, and 88 Wesley now falling back toward the pack. That outside line also not making any momentum. Top 4 cars on that inside line now breaking off the lead as they come out of the trioval to the start-finish line.
Yeah, the extreme outside line had the numbers lined up there with Ricky, Metallic, Shelton, Bernie Mobs. I think they had Bob Dixon up there as well as Sullins, but just not able to get the momentum. That inside line has forged ahead. The top 3 now 4 drivers able to clear, leaving a side-by-side battle for 5th. That's DeSpirito in the 24, Perry Bond in the 60, and here comes Terry Bombard in the 10 machine. Pretty much the last driver that has an opportunity inside of the top 20 to win his way into the playoffs.
Yep, and these boys are going for it right now. They know at the line they're only going to have about 23 laps to go. They really need to start thinking now about what their strategy is going to be. They're going to have to pit at least one more time, but you also want to make sure that you can, try to maintain some semblance of track position without falling too far back in the field, because we've seen it before, Seth. If we get a really long green flag run, or even run the rest of the race green until checkered flag, if you're, at about the half to 3/4 point of the pack right now, there is a very good chance that you could lose the lead draft. Now, alternatively, I don't want to say that you will lose it if you're the half to mid, 3/4 mark of the pack, because we've also seen in the past before green flag stops where cars that were just really, really fast have some sort of miscue on pit road or coming out of pit road. They might speed, and if you come in with 5, 6 cars in that lead pack, but you only leave with 3 or 4, that leaves a lot of opportunity for those fast cars behind you to make up ground on you and put themselves right back in contention again.
I know with the timing of cautions in the last couple of weeks, tonight included, it's been a while since these drivers have made green flag pit stops. So to your point, the possibility of maybe making mistakes that could in the end cost you a spot in the playoffs, very much a possibility for these drivers. Now, at this point in time, with completing lap 44 and going on to 45, should we have a caution from here on out, these drivers would be able to make it on fuel. Right now, projected they'd be about 4 to 5 laps short of making it to the finish. So, as you said, it's all about when they decide to make that green flag pit stop.
Yeah, and it's all also going to largely depend, can they make it to the first to that run of green flag pit stops. Number 90 Bernie Mobs having some pretty severe side by side warp in front of the number 7 of John Godfrey right now. It looks to have quelled for the moment, but in the corners, that's not good, and that's not a good position to be in. Looks like he's running in position number 7 right now. The final, and now he's blinking out quite a bit too. So that number 90 of car of Bernie Mobs, we've seen this. Can't remember if it was last week or the week before, where he was warping pretty bad, but a really bad spot to have that happen. Running 7th right in front of that pack in front of him, he might have to, concede that position there and let those guys by him until that steadies itself back out again.
The good news for Bernie Mobs is he took the checkered flag in last week's race, so he knows he's locked into the playoffs. Trying to give room on that inside line is, wow, that is some pretty significant side-to-side warping there, and it's going to take place maybe here in the tri-oval as well. Hopefully everybody's able to give him the room necessary, but I've been watching this group back here around where Jeremy Jeffries, Donnie Garrett and company are. There have been a couple of times we have nearly ended up having our 4th caution of the day. Donnie Garrett tried to stifle the outside line run led by Jessica Shelton. They nearly made contact into the wall, and then Sullins in the 38 almost had to go down to the apron, getting crowded down by Terry Bombard. So these guys back here, they are not giving an inch to each other.
They're not giving an inch, but as we talked about a little bit earlier, a lot of really good, respectful heads-up driving going on. These guys know what's on the line. They know that people are out here running for points, people out here trying so hard to get themselves into that chase, and so far, still clean and green as we come here to the start-finish line. It will be lap number 48. So we will have 19 laps remaining, this time by the first 7 or 8 cars on the racetrack. Single file now, as again, Jeffries and Garrett will fall in there at about positions 12 and 13. And, they'll get themselves single file with the rest of those lead cars. It doesn't look as though anybody's racing too hard at this point. Everybody's looking toward that green flag pit stop, I think, Seth. I think everybody wants to get there. That way they can race their way back to the end of the race from there. Everybody being pretty respectful here, pretty clean and green.
Right now, as things stand with Wiley Coate up inside of the top 5, he would be in. Elliser would be out unless something changes here in these final few laps. We are at less than 20 to go, and Elliser is going to get put a lap down here again, which right now is not good for Elliser because that solidifies him for the moment in that 26th position. The ball is now in the court of Wiley Coate. I'm also noticing that Dante Ricky has fallen back a little bit there in the 15th position, and right at this point in time, Billy Elliser needs Dante Ricky to fall down a little bit further, because if Dante falls outside of the top 10, Wiley Coate would move into the top 10, and Elliser would still maintain his spot in the top 10. So a lot of different scenarios really playing a part into whether Elliser is going to be in the playoffs or not. The finishing position of Wiley Coate and the finishing position of Dante Ricky.
Yeah, a lot of different scenarios, as you mentioned, Seth. A lot of kind of crazy things going on mathematically, determining whether or not guys will be in, guys will be out. Perry Bond, who is running in the 6th position, he's going to be stuck in the middle now, 3 wide. Not a whole lot of help. Lines on the inside and outside being led by Jeffries and Despirito, respectively. Those guys are trying to get up to those top 5 cars. Those top 5 running that middle line single file have been really, really fast, but I think guys are starting to get a little bit more antsy as they get themselves closer to green flag pit stops. Down the backstretch, Paglia getting a good push from the 088 of Nofsker. We've seen Paglia out front for a number of laps now, but you get back to Jeremy Jeffries in 5th position, and that 6th position being contested 3 wide, Garrett on the bottom, 7-11 of Godfrey in the middle, and Despirito up on that high line as they work themselves into the trioval.
Couple of drivers that we can now scratch off the list that will not make it into the playoffs. Richard Martin, saw him get involved in that 3rd wreck. He has taken his car back behind the wall, and with that DNF, that now eliminates mathematically Tim Nofsker, 2-time winner, from getting into the top 20 in points. So Nofsker will not be advancing into the playoffs either.
Man, and you knew that, we talked to Tim, and he said that he was going to run as hard as he could to try to get himself into the playoffs. I don't know that he knows right at this time that is unfortunately going to knock him out of the playoffs, but I don't think that's going to, deter him at all from trying to get this victory here tonight, and he's running really well. Despirito now leading that top line in about 6th position. He's got the 38 car right below him. It looks like that low line right now has the number of cars on the inside. Top line, middle line, not making quite as much rate space as what they have in the past. But I think, it looks like they are still trying, inching up little by little. Just not a whole lot going on right now. It's that top 5 on the inside line: Paglia, Nofsker, McClure, Wiley, and the 77 of Garrett. Now, we've got a lot of guys up there, as we've mentioned, Seth, that are running really strong and really impressively right now, that with wins could put themselves into the chase. Wiley, one of those guys. The 77 of Garrett, another one of those guys. Shelton, pretty comfortable, in points right now. She doesn't have a whole lot to worry about. She would still like to get that victory, though. So, regardless of points and guys looking toward the playoffs, there's a lot of really, really hungry drivers out here that have performed really well, but just haven't quite gotten those victories. And it makes me really curious to see, will they remain patient knowing that they're good, or will they go all out? Because as you mentioned, there's a lot of strategies being played here. There's a lot of guys, maybe that have some agreements to work with each other to try to help themselves into that chase next week. But everybody playing pretty nice right now as they work their way about halfway down the back straightaway.
Yeah, there are 5 drivers up in this lead group that are in the win and you're in situation. Wiley Coate, Donnie Garrett, as well as Bob Dixon. Also, there were 2 other ones here: John Godfrey, and I believe the other one was Terry Bombard. So they're all up in this lead group, and if they were to win, they're inside the top 20. They would automatically lock themselves in. Speaking of drivers locked in here as well, with the 43 of Richard Martin out of this race, we can confirm that 3 drivers that have locked themselves now into the playoffs on points: Chuck McClure, Jessica Shelton, and Josh Metallic. Regardless of what happens here in these final 12 laps or so, they know they will be battling for the championship next week.
Yep, and we've got 13 laps to go right now. I just mentioned that high line wasn't making a whole lot of progress, but then it suddenly surged to the front, being led by Despirito with the push from Shelton. Again, we see the number 712, Bob Seminara. He has worked his way, again, minus that 3rd gear, back up toward the front of the pack. Paglia now on the inside of the racetrack alongside the 712 of Seminara, being pushed by the 080 of Nofsker. That bottom line now falling just a little bit farther back, as that top, or middle groove rather, has kind of, now 3-4 cars, and we see Despirito, Shelton, and Seminara dive to the bottom line. That kind of surprises me a little bit, Seth. With as much speed as they were making in that middle line, they've gone down to try to slow that bottom line even more than what they were. So it'll be interesting in seeing what can Dante Ricky now do in that number 84 car being pushed by the 39 of Metallic.
Yeah, we saw Dante and Josh actually try that 3rd line at the early portion of this green flag run. So we know the 2 of them are willing to work together, and they are making forward progress. Dante Ricky now up alongside the right rear corner panel of the 3rd place running Bob Seminara. And these drivers, again, they are now closing in on green flag pit stops, and here they are. Paglia is on pit road along with a couple of others. McClure is in. Oh, we had a car miss. That's Wiley Coate. Donnie Garrett has spun on the pit road entry. Wiley Coate spins across the nose of Chuck McClure.
Yep, and Wiley Coate facing the wrong way now into the inside wall. We saw Donnie Garrett nose it down into the inside wall. 2 guys that we had just been talking about having such good runs. Seth, I think it comes back to what we talked about. It's been a long, long time since we've had green flag pit stops, and this is what happens when you don't have them that often. Mistakes made. Now that is really going to hurt. They had a pretty solid group of cars coming into the pits, but coming out, they're probably only going to have 3 or 4 cars grouped up together. The rest of them going to be pretty spread out. And I'll tell you what, the way that I saw the number 088 of Novsker shoot down across the track, I almost thought something had happened until I realized that guys were coming down pit road, now working their way back out. Again, we have 3 or 4 other cars that have also popped themselves down. Oh, we got trouble! Big trouble! The 54 of Nisus comes up into the lead cars, made contact with what looked to be the 24 of the 94 of Jessica Shelton. Yellow flag is out. Leaders were running down toward the bottom of the racetrack, and the 54 slid up across the racetrack into them. This is going to change the complexion of the race in a huge way as they come back down to the start-finish line to take the checker. Now, don't forget, we're still racing back because these guys are within 15 laps of the end of the race. That pack now being led by the 39 of Metallic, pushed from behind the number 08, the number 88 of Wesley. Metallic will come down in that lead position as they have taken the caution. Seth did not see that coming at all.
No, definitely did not, and that's going to shake this field up as well because there are drivers that were just on pit road, managed to keep themselves on the lead lap. These drivers with this yellow coming out, they have to come down pit road. More than likely, the drivers that pitted early that were able to stay on the same lap as leader Josh Metallic, those are going to be your front runners when we go back green, and it's going to be with less than 10 laps to go. And this breathes new life, I think, back into Donnie Garrett and Wiley Coate, their opportunity to still be able to either point or win, whichever the scenario might be, into the playoffs.
Yeah, assuming that they didn't take too much damage with their incidents on pit road, that puts them right back into contention again. And, you know, we had talked about when you come in under green flag stops, it breaks up the field and it gives you a different number of cars, which affects your draft and speeds differently on the racetrack. Now, all of that being said, throw it completely out the window because we've got, you know, the first 10 or 12 cars on the racetrack here that still, you know, they're going to dive onto pit road now. I don't know if they're going to take tires. They're definitely going to have to take gas, not much gas, but those cars that just pitted, they're again going to be shuffled back to the front of the pack. So I think this pays dividends for guys like the 088 of Tim Nofsker, the Donnie Garrett, Wiley Coate. As you mentioned, it cuts them a huge break. That puts Chuck McClure right back into the mix of this again. So it's going to be a really crazy, I'm betting probably about 5 laps to go when we come back for the restart. This race isn't over yet. You might even argue that it's just beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. And I am absolutely flabbergasted that we did not have a major pile up there in turn 1. A couple of drivers that got pieces of the 54. Then at the time, race leader Dante Ricky, the 712 of Bob Seminara, and the 90 of Bernie Mobbs. Somehow, all of them were able to keep their cars straight. The only car that spun was the 54 of Robbie Nisus, bringing out this caution, but that could have had major drastic results as far as the playoffs are concerned.
Yeah, the implications surrounding that incident could have been huge. But again, as we have seen all night long, Seth, some really, really good heads up driving there that prevented that from taking out a number of cars. Unfortunately, the 54 of Nisus, he has parked that car. He is going to be done for the night. A shame for him. And you hate to see something like that happen because it's pretty well understood that you can't merge until you get to turn 1. You know, you've got to complete that front straightaway, but where he would have had to merge and the speed that he was carrying, it's kind of hard to keep that car down there like that. And that was just really unfortunate timing for him and the other few cars involved here. We're going to wait for this field to cycle around here. That way we can give you an accurate rundown of where cars will be restarting once we go back green flag racing. But if you thought tonight's race has been exciting up until this point, I don't think we've seen anything yet, Seth. It's just beginning, as I just mentioned. This is going to be a really crazy finish as guys, you know, try to get wins and try to get their points. This is not over yet.
Yeah, there's too many drivers that are in the winning you're in scenario. There's too many drivers that are out there trying to rack up playoff points. before the conclusion of this race when the points get reformatted for the playoffs next week. So everybody out here has something to gain. A number of them have pretty much nothing to lose if they don't end up winning this race. They still know they're going to be battling in the playoffs. It looks like Chris Emery, the driver we talked to pre-race, is going to be the one that'll lead us back to green. I mean, how much of a monkey wrench do you think it would throw into this whole thing if a driver that came into tonight's race not able to win their way, not able to point their way into playoffs, is able to go to victory lane?
It's going to be pretty crazy here, Seth. And another something breaking here that I just noticed. I'm not sure if Tim Nofsker had something go wrong on that pit stop, but he came back down into pit road with that group of cars. I'm not exactly sure what happened. The number 6 of Wiley Coat also came back down. Now, those guys should have had enough fuel to make it to the end of the race. So in the case of the 088 of Nofsker, I'm not sure if he knew being out of the points and what was on the line for those other drivers ahead of him, if he was trying to, just kind of make the gentleman's move of letting those other cars go, or if he might have gotten a speeding penalty on pit lane, as I see the number 6 of Wiley is going to pass around him on the outside. So not quite sure what happened there, but he was running third when he came down into the pits. And, with probably 5 laps to go at the restart here, that's going to be a tall mountain to climb. Not sure if he can overcome it, but he is down at the bottom of the racetrack at this time.
I'm not certain about the Nofsker situation. For Wiley Coat, I think he came down, topped off the fuel tank, because he and Stefan Martel are going to be the lucky dogs here under this caution. Of course, with it being raced back, Wiley Coat was just put a lap down a few seconds after we had the Robbie Nice's machine spin around in turn 1, bringing out that yellow flag. So he and Martel will be back on the lead lap in 23rd and 24th. I don't remember seeing Tim Nofsker get any damage during that pit stop. I believe he came down with Wiley Coat, Donnie Garrett, and others when they all came flying down to pit road entry, but I didn't see him really make any contact with anybody. So, yeah, I can't really illuminate you on that pit stop and giving up all that track position for the 088.
Yeah, not sure. We'll have to wait and see. He is still showing on the lead lap as of right now. The only other thing I could think is maybe some sort of penalty that we didn't realize that he had gotten. But as they come across the line right now, the positions as they stand, 222, Chris Emery, he's going to lead the field back to the green flag with the 17 of Chuck McClure. Paglia and Elliott running 3rd and 4th. Donnie Garrett running 5th. Bob Dixon 6th. Crivello, Metallic, DeSpirito, Grant Wesley going to round out your top 10. 11th is going to be Dante Ricky. Terry Bombard, Jessica Shelton, Jeremy Jeffries, and Perry Bond will take you through position number 15. Bernie Mobsbomb, Sabanera, John Godfrey, Tim Nofsker, Jerm Lewis running 20th. Rodney Sullins, Dave Melson, Stefan Martel, Wiley Coat, Billy Elliser taking you to position number 25. Cy Jones running in 26th. The first car currently scored out of the race right now, Robbie Nice's in the 54, scored in 27th. Obviously, that might actually, no, that's not going to change because the car right behind him is going to be the 45, Bobby Farrell, who is 20 laps down. Richard Martin, Sonny Tallman, Manny D, and Glenn Harris round out your field in 32nd. Take a deep breath, Seth. This is going to be one heck of a race to the finish. They're going to be coming down to the green flag with 5 laps to go. The next flag will undoubtedly end this race. What do you think is going to happen here?
Yeah, it's Talladega. What kind of a question is that? The unpredictable is going to happen. But I'm telling you what, talking about this front row, Chris Emery, we saw him flying through the air 2 weeks ago in the Tri-Oval. He's got a shot of winning his first career RTG Tally Challenge race. And, even if he doesn't win this here, I want to just go on record. For Chuck McClure, if he does win this race, some races are won on the track, others are won on pit road. Chuck McClure was nearly wrecked on pit lane when Donnie Garrett spun across his nose, but he had the wherewithal to get on the brakes and avoid the 77. So if Chuck McClure wins this race here tonight, I think you got to go back to that point in time on pit road. That's what kept him in this race.
I think you're 100% correct, Seth. And we know how hungry he is to try to get that win. Now, something very interesting we see right now, Chris Emery is going to restart as the leader on the outside of the front row as they come down to the green flag. Emery with a huge lead over the number 9 of Chris Elliott. but you also see the number 17 right there. I think that number 222 might be in a little bit of trouble. He has about a car length and a half back to Chris Elliott. That bottom line being led by McClure with the push from the 28 of Paglia and the 77 of Donnie Garrett now surging ahead as they work their way onto the backstretch.
Yeah, two things did not work out for Chris Emery there. He didn't have the 9 right on his back bumper, and he didn't clear the 17 by the time they got to turn 1. McClure had Paglia and Donnie Garrett right there with him, and he will go out to the point. We've seen that 28 make a lot of aggressive moves, and don't forget, Zach, we keep kind of beating this dead horse, but we have to keep talking about it. We're into the point of the race now where a caution would end it.
A caution will absolutely end this race as we come down for 4 laps to go. McClure's still out front being pushed by Paglia and Garrett. Look at that number 56 car on the inside of the racetrack, running in position number 5. Seth, we saw the entire underside of his car at start-finish line, and he is still right up there running with these guys. Garrett now making the move to the outside of Paglia. They're 2x2 coming down the back straightaway. He's going to challenge McClure for the lead as they head toward turn number 3.
And now that third line starting to form. Here comes the Dorito machines. It's going to be Chris Elliott jumping up there. He'll pick up Donnie Garrett. Oh, Emery stuck in the middle. Now it's going to be Bob Dixon going up there to help the fellow Dorito mobile. 3 wide around the 7th position.
Man, they're banging door to door. The number 9 of Elliott and the number 222 Emery. Unfortunately for the 77 of Garrett, he's just kind of stuck in that middle line right now. That's going to be your first 3 wide. The 94 Shelton, 77 of Garrett, and Garrett will make his way back down to the inside of the racetrack. The first 8 cars on the inside now, single file. 3 wide at Terry Bombard, Chris Emery. These guys, man, they're going to be coming back to the line this time by for 2 laps to go. Intensity level rising as you now see DeSpirito working toward the outside of the 56 of Jeff Crivello, working toward turn number 3.
He's picked up Dante Ricky and Jessica Shelton. 3 cars on the top, 3 cars on the bottom. Now Donnie Garrett will pick up the inside line. Terry Bombard, 4th on that outside line. Last driver that had an opportunity to win his way into the playoffs, that 10 car trying to move to the front. Metallic now jumps up 3 wide to his outside.
Metallic thought for just a moment he might have help from the number 88 of Grant Wesley. That will not come to fruition, so he's going to be stuck on the outside line. 5 rows deep, 2x2x2x2. It looks like they just started the race with 2 laps to go. DeSpirito now working the outside of the 17 of McClure with the push from the 84 of Dante Ricky. That middle line, again, we've seen it be fast all season long. Got the clear advantage heading off toward turn number 3.
Joe DeSpirito, unbelievably the defending champion, still looking for his first win of season 51. Dante Ricky looking for a bookend regular season. He won the season opener. He wants to win the regular season closer. Jessica Shelton, Chuck McClure, a number of drivers back here just looking for that first checkered flag.
A number of drivers looking for that first checkered flag. Joe DeSpirito, we know how hungry he is. White flag this time by, top 5 cars on the inside, but now they all fan out toward turn number 1. It looked like McClure might try to make that run to the outside. Nothing happening right now. Man, it looked like the 84 might have gotten into the backside of the number 24 DeSpirito. We're side by side down the backstretch. Ricky down low. DeSpirito up high. McClure now looking to go even higher. 3 wide into turn number 3.
It's 3 by 3, 2 rows deep. Make it 3, make it 4 rows deep. We are 3 wide, 4 abreast. It's Ricky on the bottom, McClure on the top. They break away. 4 wide back there is Donnie Garrett way up the track.
Side by side into the tri-oval. McClure appears to have the advantage at this point. Right now, Ricky with the push on the inside line. They door slam down to the start-finish line. Ricky's going to pull it off. 84, Dante Ricky will get the win.
They're wrecking across the start-finish line as they were about 4 wide, 2 rows deep, but Dante Ricky is going to join Bob Seminara as well as Grant Wesley and the bonus points of Joe DeSpirito. It will be a 4-way tie for the number 1 seed heading into the playoffs next week. And Dante Ricky, a bookend regular season, race number 1, race number 10, trips to victory lane.
What a run for that number 84. But that was a great finish coming to the line. About halfway through the pack as they were coming to the start finish line, there was a wreck that happened. I didn't see who all was involved in that, but one hell of a run right to the start finish line. You couldn't tell until they got there whether it was going to be the 17 of McClure, the 84 of Ricky. A little bit of a tap from the number 8 of Jeremy Jeffries will send the 84 of Ricky spinning to the inside of the racetrack. But Seth, I haven't even looked at the points yet to see, what is the finishing order? What are the implications of this going to be? But we do know heading toward the chase next week, Dante Ricky will come in with his 2 wins on the season. I think we're about to see some burnouts here and maybe some donuts here at the start finish line.
I'll tell you what, I'm trying to quickly crunch the numbers here, and I am not seeing anybody with Dante Ricky already a former winner, the guy that came in 10th in the points. I don't see anybody that was able to point their way in. I believe that the 10 drivers that came into this race, unless I come up with something here in the next few minutes, I think the top 10 drivers that came into tonight's race are the top 10 drivers that are going to be battling for this season's chase.
Yeah, I believe you are right, Seth, and I'm not entirely sure any of the drivers that were between 11th and 20th in points. We know they didn't have any wins, unfortunately, to their credit. So I think as we head toward next week, as you mentioned, it is going to be that 10-car chase for the championship as Dante Ricky now completely ruining those back tires. What a spectacular race. He earned the right to do so. One heck of a race here tonight, Seth. Man, I think we were crunching numbers all night long, trying to figure out different scenarios that would put guys into this. And Ricky has blown up the motor on that car. That motor
that's okay.
Gone.
Bring a new one next week.
He didn't need it. That motor did exactly what he needed it to do to get to the finish of this race. But as I was saying, all the number crunching that we were doing coming toward the end of that race, we saw the guys that are in the top 10 in points this season. I don't think, at least for myself, Seth, I can't speak for you, obviously. No big surprise. Those guys were the 10 cars that were definitely the 10 fastest cars all season long, with the exception of maybe Jeffries and the 088 of Novsker. All 10 of those cars, all 10 of those drivers, very deserving. And man, they're going to put on one whale of a show here starting next week.
Yeah, without a doubt. I'm trying to confirm here. It does look like with Billy Elliser, this is why it doesn't matter if it's Talladega, it doesn't matter what track it is. When it's the last race of the regular season, you don't give up, no matter what the situation is. He kept his car on the track. He's going to finish in 25th. With finishing there, drivers that were behind him, Richard Martin, Wiley Coate, John Godfrey, Donnie Garrett, Cy Jones, Bob Dixon, Dave Melson. These are drivers that had to finish up at least in the top 10 in order to wrestle away that top 10 position in the standings from him. None of them finished in the top 10 here tonight. So Billy Elliser, wounded race car, roof damage. We saw him barrel rolling down the front straightaway. Doesn't matter. He salvaged the top 25. He is going to be in the playoffs next week.
And that is exactly that battle of attrition that we were talking about on lap number 8 when we saw him tumble multiple times across the start finish line. He hung it in there, and he's going to get himself that spot in that chase. Now, unofficially right now, we've got Dante Ricky scored as your race winner. Chuck McClure did finish second, Jessica Shelton third, Chris Emily fourth, and Joe DeSpirito was able to bring it home in position number 5. Those top 3 cars, there was only 6 100ths of a second separating them, only 4 100ths of a second separating first and second Dante Ricky and Chuck McClure.
Is it okay to call a bump and run at a super speedway? Because that's literally how Dante won this race. He got into the back of the 24 off of turn 2, got him a little bit loose, and that's what opened the door for Dante Ricky to be able to stick his nose in down the back straightaway to win this race. I mean, you normally don't hear that term at a super speedway, but that's pretty much what happened to be able to get that 84, his second win of the season.
That is exactly what happened. You couldn't call it anything else other than a bump and run, by the 84 of Ricky. Now, how frustrated DeSpirito wanting to get the first win on that season must have been, but he was able to rebound, and he still got a 5th place finish out of it. I don't suspect he's going to be too upset about that, as he knows, as all these drivers do, when it's the last lap of the race with as many cars as were still in contention, everybody kept it clean and green. And I think that was something that we saw as a pretty common theme in tonight's race, Seth. Everybody was very respectful tonight. It was a lot of really, really hard fought racing, but everybody really respectful. We didn't see the big one that we've seen in the last 2 or 3 weeks here. And, it just goes to show that is the caliber of racing that these drivers can put on here with the Tally Challenge. And man, what a show it was.
Absolutely. And, for people that are probably wondering, when are we going to see the 24 get to victory lane? Well, I want to remind everybody that last season, Joe DeSpirito won the championship. He only had one win during the regular season. His other two wins, they took place during the playoffs, one of them during the season finale. So don't count Joe DeSpirito out just yet, even though he doesn't have a number besides a 0 in the win column, because these playoffs are starting. That 24 is going to bring his A game.
Yeah, 24 is 100% going to bring his A game, and we know how fast he is. He's got 7 pole positions on the season, and again, I believe his worst finish at this point, only a 6th or 7th place finish coming into the night's race. His average finish we're talking about was 4.33. Now, he never even finished out of the top 10 all season long. So that's how you make a championship run. He did it last season. He knows how to do it again this season. So we'll see how these last few weeks play out here as we head into the chase.
The point standings are in. They are official. Joe DeSpirito, Chuck McClure, Bob Seminara, Jessica Shelton, Grant Wesley, Dante Ricky, Josh Metallic, Mark Paglia, Bernie Mobbs, and Billy Elliser. That is your top 10 in the point standings. Tim Nofsker is going to finish out the regular season 24th. Jeremy Jeffries 22nd. They will not advance into the playoffs. So indeed, we can confirm the 10 drivers that came into tonight inside the top 10 in points, they are going to be the 10 that are competing for the championship when the playoffs begin next week.
Yeah, and I would just like to point out right now, the drivers in position number 1, 2, 4 in points right now were all guys that finished in the top 5 of this race. So again, as we mentioned before, not a big surprise seeing those 10 drivers as the 10 drivers that will head into next week's chase. Seth, I am still catching my breath from the finish of that one. Man, what just an absolutely spectacular show that we got here tonight. And I can't wait to hear what these drivers have to say about it here in interviews.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, right now, looking at it, we're going to have a 4-way tie. Normally in series, you end up having a clear number 1 seed. No, we got a 4-way tie for that number 1 seed heading into the first race of the playoffs. Let's go down as it looks like our top 3 finishes you mentioned, they are going to be battling in that chase for the championship. So we'll be able to get an idea of their strategy heading into those upcoming 5 races. And let's kick things off with our 3rd place finisher, Jessica Shelton.
I saw.
Hey, Jess, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Yeah.
Well, man, I mean, you had a bird's eye view of what was going on there in that battle for the win. We saw you have to kind of decide between going with the 24 or the 84 off of turn 2. But was there a point there when they were side by side you thought, hey, I might be able to take them 3 wide and win this thing myself?
Well, actually, on the last lap coming to the trial, I made the move to the inside in front of Chuck, thinking that might be the winning call right there. I thought that I was going to have, Chuck push me all the way up, and I kind of expected Dante and Joe to stay in line. I thought maybe I had a shot, but when Chuck moved back up, I didn't have enough time to do it because I got a run on Dante. I had to back off a little bit. Chuck was already right there. We come off with 2, and I just don't know how to explain it. Dante got low, and then Joe was up high a little bit, and I thought, okay, well, I need to figure out, do I want to go with Joe? Do I want to stay with Dante? I got to run with Dante, and then at the last second, Joe started moving up higher, so I figured, okay, Chuck was going to bump, Joe, and they were going to get together on that high side. Turns out that wasn't the case. Apparently, there was another lane that I didn't see that was higher than that, and Chuck went to the high side of Joe, and I feel bad for Joe because we were pretty good for a little while running where we were. But I mean, how about that couple laps before that, Seth, on 64 or something that we had? We made that high side work, and we came with a vengeance coming back to the field.
Yeah, we saw a lot of lines formulate there in those final 3 laps. We saw you guys going 4 wide at one point there, coming out of turns 3 and 4, coming to the checkered flag. We knew that coming into this race, you were situated in a pretty good position points-wise to advance into the playoffs. And as we ended up having more drivers run into trouble and you picking up more spots, it was getting more and more confirmed that you were going to be battling for the playoffs. Your best finish of the season, a 3rd place run here tonight. How important is it at a series that runs at the same super speedway week after week to set this type of a momentum tone heading into the postseason?
Well, it's very important for me specifically because now that I've had a few runs where I've cracked the top five, cracked close to that top five mark, and I want to show like, hey, I am here. I'm not just gonna run 10th, 12th, 15th back here. I'm here. I'm trying to actually do something here, and closer to the playoffs. Now it's time. Like, okay, now, yeah, I got people that I like to work with, like Bob Seminara, Joe DeSpirito, Bernie Mobbs, Dante, really good friends that actually, help me and I help them back out. It's a really good mutual friendship between every one of them. But it's like, at the end of that one, it's like I have to try to get the win, and I really wanted to get the win at the end of that because the only thing I was thinking about was points. And one mistake, I could have been in the way back. I could have been wrecked with one to go or something, and then I could have lost all those points. So the only thing that was on my mind tonight was trying to win. But third place, that's good points in my opinion. So let's see what happens on the playoff sheet, I guess.
Hey, Jess and Zach, want to tell you, hey, one heck of a run that you gave those guys out there tonight with a really strong, solid third place finish. Now, you mentioned before you were fighting, most of the season long to crack into that top five, but I feel like maybe you're not quite giving yourself enough credit because more often than not, we saw your car toward the front of the field, having some really, really good, strong runs. But, the way that the races would play out, whether it was, crashes happening or guys, getting in line and working together and you falling back through the pack, you really kind of struggled to get those top fives, but you stayed incredibly consistent otherwise, finishing no worse to this point of this season than 14th twice. How important is it to carry this momentum with you forward and, maybe show these guys, hey, I'm going to get this win and I'm going to, make you really notice me here?
Well, it actually started. This whole momentum stride that I've got right now is basically started when Bob Seminara was willing to sit there and talk to me and start working with me and trying to help me understand what I was doing wrong. And when I started listening and just following what he was trying to do to help me understand my problems, Grant gave me a couple of advice, Terry, and Josh, a few of them, they gave me advice what I was doing wrong, and I listened to what they were telling me, learning different places on the track to go. That's when my momentum started. But when you have a bad run like I had last week, and I was really far back, and then that last up wreck saved me. You start getting doubts in your mind. But this momentum is really important. And yeah, David Cannon's always said that win will come. But it's been a while since I've got an actual league point win, so I'm really hungry for one, and I'm just trying to get the respect. That's all. You can't sit there and demand respect. You got to earn it, and racing clean and hard and working with people, even if you don't like them or you actually need to stop, shut up, learn, and listen. It's a good way to start getting respect from people.
Well, I hear you talk about that respect word, and we saw something here tonight that we didn't see so much in the last 3 weeks, albeit not intentional, I don't believe by any means. But we saw some of the hardest racing tonight with guys really bumping and grinding all night long. No major incidents to speak of. Do you think that is kind of a result of what we've seen in the last 2-3 weeks with as much carnage as we have? Do you think it's a byproduct of everybody running for points and running for wins, or do you think it's just kind of a natural ebb and flow of how these super speedway series work?
Oh, it's a natural flow. Yeah, we had playoff spots on the line tonight. You have to point your way in. It's going to be really aggressive. Yeah. Now, next week, I expect it to be a little bit more calmer, but I expect it to be really aggressive still at the same time because everyone comes in, they think, okay, well, we're just going to sit here and ride and relax, get in position. We know where we are. But then when that 15 to go comes around, we race back. All bets are off the table. Everybody wants it, and that aggressive pops up, and you think everything's going to be calm. No, it's just an even flow every week, week in, week out. It doesn't really matter if the playoffs are there or not. The aggressives are going to come up. I think it's going to be a little bit calmer next week, hopefully. But yeah, that's how I look at it anyway.
Well, obviously, we're really looking forward to these playoffs starting. We want to congratulate on making it into the playoffs there. As Zach alluded to, the numbers have been tremendous for you this season to be able to lock yourself in on points. And yeah, definitely with the consistency we've seen, definitely agree that win will be coming at some point here, maybe before the close of this season. We're going to turn the microphone over now. Just let you do some shout outs.
Well, big shout out to, obviously Matt Rod, FRN, to doing the broadcast like you always do every week and allowing me to be part of that team and group as well. I really do appreciate that. Especially you, Seth, for actually picking me to do NR broadcast, and you could have picked someone else. I do appreciate that very much. I want to thank, Josh for putting this series on because he actually maintains a really good series. I mean, any screw ups that happen, he tries to fix it the very next week so we don't repeat that. So he's a really good admin. He does what he needs to do. So a really good shout out to him for having it, RTG overall for putting this on every week. Even if it's not just this league, the other leagues are really good too. I mean, Seth, you and I have commentated on a few of those, broadcasted those. It's really good racing all around. I really want to thank specifically people like, you got Dante, you've got Bob Seminara, Bernie Mobs, and Joe DeSpirito. Those guys are willing to try to help me and stick with me and try to help me learn. I mean, and Seth, you've been around me. I have a hard head. I'm very stubborn and I have a bad attitude, especially on the whisper. But I mean, these guys, they take the time to try to work with me to get better, and it's shown ever since Bob and a few of these guys sit there and tell me what I'm doing wrong, what I need to start doing better. The proof is there. So I mean, I really appreciate them for helping me and working with me the whole time. But yeah, Seth, I want to thank you for not being mad at me for not running an FRN card tonight, because apparently it helped me finish a lot better when I was running the Bernie Mob scheme. So thank you.
Yeah, might need to ditch that FRN scheme for the playoffs. Who knows? But
I don't know.
Congrats on the third place run here tonight, Jess. So hopefully you can carry this momentum into the playoffs, and we look forward to seeing what you do when the playoffs start next week.
Yep, I'll see you then.
See if we can now get our second place finisher, another driver that is still looking for his first win of the season, but he will be in the playoffs this season as well, and that is Chuck McClure. Hey, Chuck, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
How's it going, gentlemen?
Well, man, I mean, you gave it a heck of a shot there on that final lap. We saw you migrate up to that third line, make some great forward progress. What little bit more do you think you needed, especially coming to that white flag, to be able to be up there and battle for this win?
I've been thinking about that since the checkered, and I don't know what else I could have done. I mean, I did everything I knew to do and still come up just that much short.
We've seen a lot of drivers go to victory lane, but we've seen drivers like yourself be up there inside of the top 3 in the point standings, just based on the consistent runs you have week after week. Do you think that this is definitely a statement for these other guys saying, hey, I may not have a 1 in the win column, but I'm going to keep this consistent run going, and I'm going to be in that Final Four for the championship?
I hope so. I want them to look in the mirror and say, "Uh-oh, he's right back there," and I'm afraid of what he's going to do. That's exactly what I want these guys to think.
Hey, Chuck, great second place finish tonight. Good to see you get that run. Man, I was really watching you. I thought that 17 might have, with that Gentleman Jack paint scheme, have what it took to get you into victory lane this season. 3 second place finishes. How hungry are you, heading into the playoffs here to finally knock those guys off the podium and say, hey, give me that trophy?
I want to win probably worse than anybody in here right now. It's been, I think, 2.5 seasons since I've got a checker flag here, and it's tough. But yeah, I want to win pretty bad.
All right, so you were sitting in the catbird seat. What the bump that Dante gave to the number 24 of Joe DeSpirito coming off turn number 2, I'm not sure that viewers, casual viewers might realize how treacherous something like that could have been. Did you see that as maybe a possibility, an opportunity for your C's to part and get yourself up there to victory lane? Or were you working at that point, more focused on committing to one of those lines one way or the other? Because we saw you make that move to the outside line, heading into turn 3, making it 3 wide, coming, for that checkered flag. Do you think there's anything you could have done a little bit more differently?
Honestly, I don't in this particular race. No, I didn't really have, and part of that's my fault. I was committed to the 28 088 all night, and I had to leave him, or I was going to go further back than second. And yeah, but when those two bumped each other, I thought, well, I got another chance here. And like I said, just that much short.
All right, Chuck, again, congratulations on that second place finish. Always good talking to you, my guy. Is there anybody that you'd like to give a shout out to here?
I want to shout out to you guys in RTG. I mean, these races get more and more intense every week, and it's only going to get worse or better, whatever side of the fence you're on there, uh, when the chase comes up next week. So, yeah, it's going to be intense.
Well, Chuck McClure riding a big wave of momentum into the playoffs. He's going to be battling for said championship. Congrats on a great run here tonight, Chuck, and we look forward to seeing what you're able to do when the playoffs kick off next week.
Appreciate it, gentlemen.
And let's go down to Victory Lane and talk with now two-time winner Dante Ricky. Hey, Dante, it's Zach and Seth up here in the Flatout Racing Network studios. You got us?
Absolutely.
Well, man, I mean, not normally do we have the words bump and run and super speedway in the same sentence, but that's basically what happened over there in turn two. We saw you get that 24 a little bit loose, make the move to the inside, but after you'd cleared for the lead there heading into turn three, we saw a third lane forming on the outside line. So what kind of a defensive plan were you able to put together there?
That last lap was absolutely crazy. And from the 5 to go restart, I was behind Joe from that exact moment, and Jessica was behind me. And we were very careful about how we made a move to the middle lane with about 3 to go. When Joe was clear and he had the opportunity to make the move, we were able to line up and push. I saw Josh in the mirror, and I don't know if that outside line ever worked. I got to tell you, though, just to summarize my race, it was very hard for me to make moves up to the outside tonight, and it was a game of timing. I would try to make a move to the top, and then all of a sudden the middle lane would move back to the bottom in front of me, and then there would be no chance to improve position. And for a long time, I really didn't think I had a chance to make a move up on the outside. And it paid off when it worked. I was able to follow Joe to the middle, and then coming to the white flag, everything was clean and it seemed as if we were going to move down to the bottom, and I didn't know if that was really the right move because then you open it up to the fifth or sixth place cars to make moves in the corner. And it was almost like there was some kind of a lane change where we went back to the middle in the middle of the corner, and I gave Joe a small bump. And I hate to move somebody out of the way to win. That's not the way I race at all, by no means. But it seemed as if that made him a little bit out of shape, that he would be coming off of turn two in the middle. And I just took a chance at it to go low. And it seemed as if Chuck decided to go high. And now it's anybody's game at that point. It was fair game, and Joe got stuck in the middle. It was a difficult situation for all of us. And we go from a top five single file situation in the corner to having a 3 and 4 wide finish here live on FRN to complete the regular season. And that's just really, really good, hard racing. Good battle there with Chuck coming to the line. Everyone overall I thought was nice and clean tonight. And even though I didn't really get a whole lot of practice this evening, I just kind of played it conservative early in the race, hung in the back, didn't make any super aggressive moves. And really, when I tried to go to the front on the very high third lane of the racetrack, I just didn't have the success that I normally would have tonight. And I don't know if it was just a matter of other people making moves or no help from behind.
Dante, the sticky situation with these super speedway type series is, yes, the regular season is now over. You mentioned that you were working with Shelton, you were working with Despirito. We saw you working with a 39 Metallic here tonight. But heading into next week, they're your competition. You guys are all advancing into the playoffs, and only 4 drivers are going to be advancing into that season finale with a chance of winning the championship. So how difficult is it now to be able to balance those alliances at the same time battling each other to be able to move on to the next round of the playoffs?
When that white flag comes out, and even within 5 to go, it's anybody's game. Whoever has the best opportunity to make a move has a right to make that move. And, we can't fault anyone for taking an opportunity and having it pay off for them on the long run. We won't know if we made a mistake, though, until the end of the race. And if for real a move that we made wasn't the right move, we'll certainly know about it once we take the checkered flag. But it's going to be a game of who has the most willingness to take risks. And that person who takes the most risks here in the chase, they're the one who's probably going to end up as a champion. And risk taking, usually, as long as it's, a good risk that puts you in the lead, you'll win the race. So it's really a chess game out here, and who makes the best move and who can get help to pull out and pass. And Jessica was an amazing help tonight. She really worked well together with me, and we're just still trying to get her a shot at victory lane too in the coming weeks. So now that we're in the chase, race wins mean the world, and every point really matters. So mistakes will be extremely critical moving forward in this series. And we're going to have a pretty good seating in the chase. I hope to be able to capitalize on some good finishes and be competitive each and every week. We do plan to start qualifying for races in the chase. We will be giving it 100% effort from the minute we get on the racetrack and practice to the minute we load up the hauler at the end of the night.
Hey, Dante, it's Zach up in the booth. Hey, man, congratulations. Win number 2 on the season. You guys put on one hell of a show out there. Now, I'm going to piggyback off what you and Seth were just talking about with the level of aggression out there on the racetrack. Now, I think we probably saw the most aggressive racing tonight that we've seen all reason long at Talladega and on Flatout Racing Network. However, that being said, with as aggressive as you guys were, I think I probably saw the most respect being given between drivers lap after lap after lap all race long, which made it to, really ultimately led to what the outcome of the race was. Do you see that level of aggression really ratcheting up here as we work our way into the playoffs? Or do you think it'll be a little bit more of guys, trying to make it to that Final Four race?
Well, I certainly think in the playoffs and in the chase, we're going to have a lot of aggressive racing. And, tonight there was an awful lot of contact on the racetrack, and most of it was fair. The, we did have a few caution flags, but for the most part, everything in the race was within fairness, and the drivers still respected each other. And I enjoy that type of racing to be competitive. And, you get down to the last 10 laps of the race, you expect people to take more and not give as much on the racetrack. And that's the type of intensity that we're going to see in the playoffs. So, I really do expect people to go for the win, but also try to beat those key drivers that they have to beat each week in and out. So you'll see aggression somewhat for the win, and also some drivers against certain drivers that they're competing against closely in the playoffs. And that will certainly ramp up depending on the point situation as we move forward round 11, 12, 13, and then into 14 and 15.
All right. Now, as we know, Talladega can be quite the unpredictable racetrack, playing havoc throughout the field. It doesn't matter exactly where it is that you're running. So, that being said, as you head into the chase starting next week, do you go in with the mentality of I need to win as many races or all of these races if it's completely possible? Or do you go in there, try to get one win, and try to kind of take it easy to secure your spot into that Final Four?
My goal is to try and get in the final four the best way I can. And having 2 wins on the season helped me a lot to get in the chase. But it's like starting the season all over again. And these races are very difficult to win. I believe that last season I might have gone without a victory at all. And these are some of the hardest races to secure a victory. And knowing that, sometimes it's out of your hands. So in these first couple of chase races, I need to make sure that I go out there and win or try to win one of them. And if I go home with a second or third place finish, I will consider that a win for sake of, my situation. Of course, that might not always guarantee me to advance to the final round of the chase or be one of the final drivers, but at least I'll be leaving the race knowing that I did the absolute best I could and gave it a full 100% effort. So there will be situations that will be out of my hands, and there are going to be situations that I will be able to take control of on the same time. For sure, a race win means a lot, but a race win here is not going to guarantee me anything in the chase. I'm going to have to come in each week with the mentality that I'm going to go out there and try to win the race.
All right, Dante, you gave us a great show tonight, especially that move on the last lap with that bump and run. I couldn't really ask for anything better from a spectator standpoint. So good job on the season win number 2. You got any shout outs or thanks that you want to give?
I'd like to thank my family, my brother tuning in tonight, My mom just had a birthday a couple days ago. Thank you so much. And also to all of the drivers at RTG who come each night of the week. We put on some really amazing racing. And also to my fans and friends who race in other leagues who are watching tonight. Always enjoyable to race against you guys. A big thank you to you, Zach, and also Seth for tonight's broadcast. This was an exciting race, just as you said, and I'm sure that the fans and everybody who watched got a really good, entertaining show for this evening. Big thank you as well to our RTG admins and owners, Josh Metallic, Wiley Cody for putting this league on. Also, of course, we wouldn't have this without David Cannon and Terry Bauman and Sean Prime, our league owners, who really do a tremendous job helping us out running the leagues each and every night. Without them, I don't know where we'd be. This place is awesome. Thank you so much, guys.
That's Dante Ricky. He has a bookend regular season, wins the season opener, wins the regular season finale, carries that momentum into the playoffs. We wish you the best of luck there, Dante, and congratulations on your victory. Go and enjoy it.
Thanks, guys. Have a good night.
As the conclusion of this race draws closer, I was looking just briefly here, Zach, over the playoffs from last season and kind of comparing it to this season, as well as looking back to season 49 as well. Dante Ricky, this is the first time in 2 seasons he has made it into the playoffs. For Jessica Shelton, it's the first time she's ever made the playoffs. I believe this is the first time Billy Elliser is in the playoffs, and Chuck McClure last season missed out on making it. He is in as well. Some names that were in the playoffs last year that miss out this year: Richard Martin, Tim Knofsker, Terry Bombard, and Donnie Garrett. I mean, it just shows that when you have races every single week at a track as unpredictable as Talladega, the landscape of the playoffs from season to season is going to constantly change.
It really does. And now you also take into consideration with the changing landscape of the drivers and the way that these races play out. You also have to remember these guys need wins. They need really strong runs to put themselves into contention for the last race, which will ultimately be that championship race. We've got all those guys in the top 10s that have got wins this season, but we've also got a good number of those drivers that have no wins. Namely, you look at the top 2 or 3 in points, no wins between between those guys, which is kind of crazy when you think about it. Joe DeSpirito, no wins. Chuck McClure, no wins. Bob Samarier did win. Jessica Shelton, no wins. It kind of comes back to what you talk about. The consistency factor really helped get them into the chase. But now, as we work ourselves into the chase next week, you have to take it from the notch that you've been all season long, being as strong and consistent as you've been, and step it up even more from there, because those are, without a doubt, the 10 best drivers so far this season. The numbers don't lie. The points don't lie. And I think everybody that is within that top 10 in points understands and knows that. And they all come in with that understanding and respect for their fellow competitors. And I think that can only do good things for the racing that's left to come here.
And, obviously, we're going to be covering the playoffs here for the next 5 weeks. And just to give people a little bit of foreshadowing of how this playoff system works, we're going to be whittling our way down from 10 drivers to the final 4 in the season finale. How we do that: races 11 and 12, at the end of race 12, the drivers 8th through 10th in points, they are eliminated, leaving us with 7. Races 13 and 14. Race 14 is the elimination race where we go down from 7 to our final 4. You brought up the question to Dante Ricky, so I'm going to kind of put you in the driver's seat. Let's say you're going into this first round of the playoffs, the first 2 races here, having to advance your way into the top 7. Do you go in the must-win mentality, or do you go in, I got to just be consistent in these 2 races?
Well, I think as a driver, you always go in with a must-win mentality. No matter what series you're in, no matter what race you're running, you always want to go in there and get that victory. But the way that, this chase is set up, that puts a little bit, more pressure on that. So you want to go in there and that you've got 9 other drivers that are around you at any given time on the racetrack that you need to beat. If they're going by eliminations of 2 per round, then at the very worst, if it's me personally, the worst that I want to finish in those first 2 races is 8th position, because I know coming out of those first two races, there's only going to be, 7 other drivers left, 8 including myself. So you want to go in there and run as absolutely best as you can, be as absolutely as consistent as you can. But again, we reiterate the premium that is on wins and running well. Joe DeSpirito, he's made it this far. At the end of this regular season, 48 points ahead of second place, but no wins. Now, if you go into that last race, we know Joe DeSpirito, he was the champion last year with that one win, with only a final 4 in that last race. We know, regardless how many races that he's won going into that final race, the only thing that's going to get him that championship is finishing better than those other 3 competitors. So you go into these next, however many races that we've got left here, keeping a very special and particular eye on those other 9 drivers that are going to be in this chase grid.
Yeah, and I think that they have to keep an eye on each other as well, because I think that maybe more so than the season finale, this first race is going to be crucial for these drivers, because you run into a bad performance in the first playoff race, being one of those 10 drivers. We've had car counts of 30 to 35 drivers each and every week. If you finish dead last and you find yourself about 30 points below that cut line, we saw here tonight, Jeremy Jeffries wasn't able to overcome a 25-point gap to get into the top 20. So technically, you're going into that first elimination race in a must-win situation. And with so many drivers on the track, so many drivers that are able to compete for the race win, that is such a tough task to try and pull off.
Oh, you're absolutely right. And I'm going to tell you something right now. If we have one of those chase contenders go in next week and win that first race right off the bat, that really sets you up quite nicely for the remainder of the chase. Conversely to that, if you go in and you're one of those 10 chase drivers and you finish, like you mentioned, we could very hypothetically have a 34, 35 car field, and you find yourself out within the first 10 laps of that race, that puts extreme pressure on you to go out there and have to win that second race. And I don't want that sort of pressure on me, Seth. Some guys perform really well under that sort of pressure. Some people perform better under that sort of pressure, but I don't think this is one of those series that you can really take that chance on. I think you need to go out there and perform and try to get victories, however you can from the word go.
Especially when your fate is more than likely going to be more so in the hands of others rather than you controlling your own destiny. Dante Ricky put it perfectly here tonight. This was a chess match, and all we've done from the transition of this week to next week, we've finished the game, we've set the pieces back up, we're getting ready to play another chess match here with these 10 playoff contenders. But man, what a season finale here for the regular season to set up what the playoffs are going to be for next week. We begin the first round of the playoffs with race 11, and we're going to be bringing that to you live next Thursday evening. Green flag to fly at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I mean, Zach, it's been a great regular season. I cannot wait to start these playoffs, and I appreciate you joining me every lap of the way here for this regular season.
Yeah, I strongly urge anybody that's been tuning in and watching these races, do not stop. What you saw tonight is just the beginning of what we're going to see in the chase. So it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be really exciting. And we're going to see some really, really good competitive racing here, leading into these last 4 or 5 races. Seth, thank you very much. Flatout Racing Network, thank you guys very much for this opportunity. I've had a lot of fun throughout this regular season. Really looking forward to this chase. Owners, admins of RTG, thank you guys for everything that you do. All the drivers that we see week after week in this series, putting on a great show for us, for all the fans, for all the viewers at home. You guys are doing a great job. So can't thank everybody enough, Seth. We will see you next Thursday, and man, I can't wait.
For 10 drivers, the journey begins. The end of the road, a championship trophy. The championship chase begins here for the RTG Talladega Challenge next week. For Zach Freemile, I'm Seth Cole. Thanks for tuning in here this evening as you've been watching another broadcast courtesy of the Flatout Racing Network.